Factor Podcast.
What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching the 88th episode of the Lax Factor Lacrosse Podcast. Today is the weekend preview show. We are going to talk about a boatload of lacrosse. We're going to talk Villanova at Penn, Georgetown at Towson, Hofstra at Ohio State, Stony Brook at Bryant, Denver at Notre Dame, Duke at Loyola, Cuse at Hopkins, Rutgers at Princeton, Albany at Maryland, Yale at Michigan, Penn State at Cornell. That is a lot of lacrosse to sneak into this show here. Before I get into it, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and then go to laxfactor.com. You can get yourself some swag, t-shirts. We have all sorts of t-shirts, and we're building on that every single day. And then a little bit from our sponsor, Sideline Swap. Best place by far to buy and sell lacrosse gear, hard to find college gear, pre-owned heads, shafts, helmets, and more, up to 70% off. So go to sidelineswap.com or click the link in the description below. So let's dive right into all this crap. We have number 14 Villanova at 3-2 against number 9 Penn. Penn is hosting this game. Matchups here to watch. Villanova has struggled to win faceoffs, and Penn does not struggle to win faceoffs. Kyle Gallagher has been excellent for Penn. He's coming off a great game against a very good Gerard Arceri. Currently, overall, Gallagher's sitting at 59% at the dot in terms of draws won. I expect him to be 65% or up or above against Nova, and that's going to be a huge factor, and it could end up being the margin in this game. The reason that Villanova has been able to win games, even tough games, despite losing faceoffs by a margin, has been Patrick Kennedy. He's forced 9 turnovers, picked up 18 ground balls for Villanova. So against Maryland, he had a goal, 4 caused turnovers, and 4 ground balls. So Kennedy has been really tough for Nova. Nova on offense, Connor Kirst, 13-7, Keegan Kahn, 8-9, so they can score goals. They can run with anybody. What it comes down to for them is winning faceoffs and playing solid D as a team. Poor Will Vitone in cage for Villanova, 48% right now, but he has played a tough schedule. I expect him to finish the season in the area of 55, 58, maybe even better. 48% through their first 5, though, facing Penn State, Yale, Maryland, Hofstra, all teams that can score, and even Delaware can score goals. So Penn is no different. So Vitone, expect for this to be another rough outing for him. Not in the sense that he won't do well. He's going to make some really big saves in this game, but just Penn is a great offensive team. For Penn, Lully's been great, 12-9, Dylan Gergar, 9-4, and they've got the usual suspects filling out below them. And Birkinshaw, like Vitone, has struggled in cage. Birkinshaw sitting at 37% coming into this game, but once again, he's played Penn State, Duke, and Maryland so far, so all teams that could fill it up. But if he wants to hold on to his starting job, this is the game he needs to get himself to 50%, or I would start to question whether or not he's the guy to fill the void in cage for Penn this season. The line, we're setting this one Penn by 3. And honestly, this is a tough one. I think that 3 is a pretty good margin. Villanova could certainly cover. The problem's going to be at the faceoff dot. If they get smoked on faceoffs, that's the margin, and you could end up seeing Penn by 4 or 5. I'm going to go out on a limb on this one and say that Penn is going to handle their business. They're going to win faceoffs, and they're going to score goals. So if I was taking this bet, I would take Penn at -3 for this one. Next game. Quick one, Georgetown, number 12, 5-0 at Towson. It's going to be, I don't think it's going to be a bloodbath, but I think Georgetown's going to certainly win by a margin. Caraway, 29 points. Watson and Clark for Georgetown, both at 22. They're going to feast against the struggling Towson. Mostly, like I said, Towson's defense is tough, but when teams can't play offense, a la Johns Hopkins, it ends up making their defense struggle as well. Owen McElroy in cage for Georgetown. He's been stopping the ball at a 62% clip. Granted, it's been against weak opponents, but Towson isn't strong. So we set the line at this one at G-Town at 5.5, and I think that's probably a good line. And if I had to pick, I'm probably taking G-Town at -5.5 here on this one if I was placing that bet. Next game, Hofstra, 3-2 at number 19, Ohio State. They're also sitting at 3-2. Both of these teams can score goals. Both of these teams have been inconsistent on defense. At the dot, Brian Herber for Hofstra has been winning them at a 61.9% clip. He's going to have to play really well against Inacio, who's coming off a 30-for-37 outing against Cornell. Herber should do far better than that simply because he's a better face-off man than what Cornell was throwing out there at Anasio, but he's going to have to do better than that because if he doesn't, Hofstra is not the offensive team that Cornell is. They'll have a hard time getting over the hump if they get murked that badly at the face-off dot. I think that in general, assuming that Herbert handles his business and can even keep those face-offs at 60-40 in favor of Ohio State, I think the difference here is going to be LeClaire, Reed, and Myers. These guys can score goals. LeClaire is just an absolute beast. I don't think Hofstra is going to have an answer for him. So they're going to cause Hofstra fits, that trio is on defense. Kursan for Ohio State, he's been very good in cage, 58% so far, and he's been better than Bobby Casey for Hofstra at 48%. So that's another difference in this game. So we set the line Ohio State by 3. If I was taking this bet, I would take Ohio State at -3. Because I think that when you look at all of the important pieces and all the matchups that Ohio or Hofstra would have to win this game, I think they're a little bit outmatched just in terms of the matchups, the face-off dot and in cage, and then offensively, Hofstra has weapons, but Ohio State has more weapons. So I think that's the difference in this game. Next one, we'll do this one real quick. Stony Brook, 5-1, Bryant, 2-3. It was interesting because Stony Brook's been playing really well, but Stony Brook's needed OT 3 times to beat St. John's, Brown, and Sacred Heart. The good news is they're winning their games. They're winning their non-conference games before they get into America East play. The bad news is they're barely beating some teams that, if you were a really good team, you would hope you would beat by a little bit of a margin. They don't dominate any stat. I was trying to find some kind of glaring stat that sticks out that would tell us why are they 5-1. Did not look like a 5-1 team in the stat sheet. Their cumulative stats across the first 6 games are all pretty even. The one stat that stood out, they're putting 29% of their shots on cage and forcing their opponents into just 25% of their shots on cage. That could be because they're playing good, pesky defense, or it could just be that they've been playing lesser opponents. But they are forcing turnovers as well, but then they're also turning the ball over as well. But either way, they're playing tough, they're winning games, and they're simply outscoring the other team, which is what you're supposed to do. So I say Bryant can score goals, but their defense and goalkeeping has been a little shaky. So Stony Brook by 3.5. If I was taking this bet, I would take Bryant to cover. I think that Stony Brook has not put teams away yet. And I think Bryant is good enough that they're going to hang. So if it was me, Bryant covering in this one, I think, is just about the upset. I think Stony Brook could very easily beat them by 5 or 6, maybe more. But I think that Bryant's going to be pesky. They're going to play tough in this game. They're at home. So I'd take Bryant to cover in this. Let's see here. Next one, number 17, Denver, sitting at 3-2. Number 10, Notre Dame at 2-1. This is going to be the battle of the offenses, the battle of the defenses. What's really going to come down to here is who's going to score more goals. Both of these teams, I think, are very evenly matched. I think the difference, once again, Leonard at the faceoff dot is solid. I think that he's probably going to win and have the slight edge there. I think defensively, Notre Dame, a little bit deeper defensively, and then offensively, probably Notre Dame has the edge here, but the kicker being Denver is a very well-coached team, and they're going to be hungry for a win in this one. I've got the line set here at Notre Dame by 2, and if I were taking this bet, I would take Notre Dame at -2. Because I think that they'll probably, after I set this one, I was like, man, the reality here is Notre Dame will probably win this by 4 or 5, but you can never count Denver out, especially when they're really hungry and when they're in need of a win. Denver does not want to drop to 3-3 here because the Big East isn't terrible. Their conference isn't terrible. Number 13, Duke, 4-2. At number 11, Loyola, 4-1. Now this one, I am probably the oddball here. A lot of people like Loyola in this game, partly because defensively Loyola is experienced and Duke offensively is young. So when you look at these matchups, it's like, veteran defense versus a young offense. But Williams and Caputo and Duke in general has started to figure it out. That number 2 midline, I think they need to become the number 1 midline. And heaven forbid, if that number 1 midline ever figures things out for Duke and they end up having 2 ridiculously solid midlines, all bets are off for the Blue Devils. I mean, they're end up back in the quarterfinals. That second midline has played tough. They've been the saving grace for Duke here for sure this season. So if that number 1 midline ever figures it out, and I think this may be the game that they're going to, Duke is going to start beating teams by a margin. I think that Loyola has looked great post Spencer and Scanlon. I think that Duke's issue is definitely between the pipes. Loyola, they've had good defense, and their goalkeeper has been better than expected. Schaefer, he's been playing a little bit better than expected between the pipes. I think Schaefer's a junior, but he's been a solid keeper. Lindley, 17 goals and an assist. Olmsted, 10 and 11. So offensively, Loyola has figured out who their guys are. We kind of already knew who their guys were, but they're anchoring the offense, and then on defense, Loyola has been strong. I think overall, Loyola has overachieved. I predicted that they would be a really solid team, but I'm still setting the line for this one at Duke by 3.5, simply because I think Duke is figuring it out. We're once again in March. They're going on the road playing at Loyola, and I'm almost picking this as kind of a trap game for Loyola because Loyola's coming in thinking we've got a shot, maybe even a little bit favored. Duke probably coming in a little bit angry, dropping out of the top 10. They're sitting at 4-2. They've played some close games that they didn't want to play. They lost to Air Force. They didn't want to lose that. So I'm thinking an angry Duke beats Loyola by 3.5 goals is the line here. If I was taking this bet, I'd take Loyola to cover. I'd take Loyola at plus 3.5 all day long, but do not be the least bit surprised to see Duke come out and roll them by 4, 5, 6 goals. Next one, and this is a big one this weekend. I say it's a big one because I'm a Cuse fan, but it is a big one for Cuse and Hopkins. Is number 1 Cuse 4-0 at Johns Hopkins, sitting at 1-3. Now Hopkins is going to have a hard time defending Syracuse. 13 of 17 assisted goals in the UNC game. In the UNC game, they scored 17, 13 of them were assisted. In the Princeton game, they scored 18 goals, 11 of them assisted. So Hopkins, they're having a hard time covering people, and they're having a hard time off ball. That is a recipe for disaster on defense. And then couple that with goaltenders that aren't playing well. The Hopkins defense has been rough. However, the Hopkins offense is one of the reasons that defense has struggled so badly. I feel like the defense has kind of overperformed a little bit considering their predicament, and that because the offense has also struggled terribly, that's just compounded those defensive issues for Hopkins. Cole Williams, 6-5, Forey Smith and Evan Zinn, both at 6-3, Epstein and DeSimone at 3-3. Now, Epstein, he had 2-2 last week. That's his highest scoring output so far. So I think this game's going to be closer than some people think it is, simply because every week I'm assuming that's going to be the week that Epstein feels better and gets closer to 100% and then puts up some serious-ass points. Syracuse, though, Scanlon 13-4, Trimboli 13-2, Curry 12-3, Rafis 2-11, Dordevic 7-4, Porter and Cage at 56%. They may get Mellen back. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything, but I did see a tweet or a Instagram post by Mellen kind of implying that he's at least feeling better, and he is going to be playing this season, obviously. So I'm wondering if this will be the game that Mellen comes back. The Syracuse defense, they've given up points, but they've also forced some turnovers. DiPietro, 6 caused turnovers. Kennedy, 5 caused turnovers, and Porter's been strong in net. The Syracuse ride has been insanely formidable. Griffin Cook forcing 7 turnovers so far. Rafis, 4 caused turnovers in the ride game. So Syracuse is going to put all that to practice and good use in this game this weekend. Keys for Hopkins, how does Epstein feel? As I keep saying, the healthier he is, the better Hopkins gets. If this is the game that he's back, this is going to be a closer game than people think. As with every Syracuse game so far this season, it has potential to be close going into the fourth quarter. I think that Fopp at the faceoff dot, he's sitting at 69%, Varello at 61%. Prouty for Hopkins has been tough at 61%, so I think that matchup is going to be key. Can Prouty keep himself at that 50? Can he make these faceoffs 50-50? That will bode well for Hopkins. They want to try to keep possession away from Syracuse, so that's going to be huge. Watch the faceoff dot in this game. As always, one of the big differences is going to be the Syracuse midfield, specifically that first midfield line, and the second midfield line needs to kind of take their heads out of their butts. They played poorly the last 2 games, so they need to do a little bit better. And then the Cuse attack, I think, is going to be able to find defensive matchups. They're going to be able to find off-ball situations, and they're going to be able to create points in transition off the ride game. So I think Cuse is going to score 18 goals. I think the Cuse defense is going to be able to keep Hopkins under 13. So I picked Cuse by 4.5. I would almost take Cuse at -4.5 for this one, but if Epstein's feeling better, once again, that's where it's all bets are off. We're at Homewood. Hopkins needs a win badly. They are a wounded dog, so I like Hopkins to cover if Epstein's healthy, but if Epstein's still not himself, probably they don't end up being able to do that. Rutgers, 2-3 at number 3 Princeton 4-0. I think this game's going to be closer than some people think. It's a rivalry game. I think that Princeton at some point is going to have to, play down a little bit, and so far they have been playing up. Mike Sowers is 13-29, 42 points over 4 games. Over under for points for this game, one of our prop bets is Sowers at 8.5 points. I'd take the over on that in this one. Princeton, solid goalie play out of Peters, 53%. They've defended the ball well so far this season. Rutgers, they're in the middle of a 3-game skid, so that's rough for them. Charlem Beatties and Mullins, they're as good as anyone, but they've struggled defensively, and they've had a hard time outscoring teams, even though they can score goals. We picked, Skatis and I, Princeton by 4 in this one, and that's a tough one. If I'm taking this bet, I'm going to take Princeton at -4, but Rutgers could keep this interesting. It is a rivalry game, and traditionally these teams play each other really tough. So you might want to take Rutgers to cover, but I would personally take Princeton at -4 simply because I think Sowers once again is going to go bonkers, and Rutgers just isn't going to have an answer for him, just like nobody else has had an answer for him yet this season. Albany, 2-2 at number 7 Maryland, 4-1. Wisnowskis, 28 points. Bernhardt, 23 points, and company. They're going to be too good for Albany overall. Despite Albany seemingly starting to play a little bit better, they're getting better play in the cage, they're getting a little bit better play defensively, and Nanakoke is gelling and playing like a monster. 5 goals against UMass, 5-3 against Harvard. I'm delighted to see him playing well like that, letting the game come to him, scoring in opportunities, getting rid of the ball when those doubles come. He's been playing really well the last 2 games. He's been playing better this season. It's just starting to click in terms of point production for him now. He's 10-3 over the last 2 games and 14-7 total. So that gives you an idea of how well he's done these last 2 games. Doesn't matter though. Maryland is way better than Albany is. Across every third of the field. It doesn't matter where you're looking at it. So I'm picking Maryland by 5.5 in this one. And honestly, if I'm taking this bet, I'm taking Maryland at -5.5. I think they're going to cover that. Number 5, Yale, 2-1 at Michigan, 3-2. Yale is angry, and you don't want to play an angry Yale. TD is going to merk Michigan at the faceoff dot. The Yale attack are going to have some matchups. Brandow, I think, is going to have a very big day against Michigan, and I don't think Michigan's going to be able to defend the quickness of Brandow, and that's going to open things up for everybody. Yale's main thing, they need to find some consistency in cage, and they need to find some consistency with their mids overall. Their mids are playing better than even I expected them to, but they'll need them to continue to develop. In this one, Yale by 5.5. I take Yale at -5.5 on that one if I'm taking this bet. Number 2, Penn State. This is possibly one of the biggest games of the weekend. Let's go out on a limb. Let's call this the game of the week. Penn State at Cornell. Not really at Cornell. They're playing it in North Carolina, but Cornell is listed as the home team. They're not playing at North Carolina. They're playing in North or South Carolina or something like that at one of the showcases. So this is going to be a battle, and the difference here, once again, I keep saying it, but this is the truth. The difference is going to be at the faceoff dot. Cornell coming off an absolute murking in their faceoff game. One of the reasons Cornell had a hard time last year in the Ivy, they couldn't win faceoffs. They did not win faceoffs last week and got absolutely destroyed by Inacio. And Inacio, a top guy, but he is not the top guy. Arceri could potentially do exactly what Inacio did to Cornell. He's that good as well. So if they can't handle the faceoffs, and if Arceri merks them in any manner in a similar way to what Inacio did, this game is going to go off the rails for Cornell. But I think Cornell's going to figure it out. I think they're going to figure out ways with a week to prepare to disrupt the faceoff game a little bit, but that's going to be the key in this game. If they get murked at the faceoff dot, then I would definitely take Penn State by a margin in this one. But you can never count Teat, Piatelli, Donville, Long, Fletcher, you name it. These guys have got Cornell's offense is very formidable. So if they can manage the faceoff at all and get possessions, force some turnovers on the Penn State side a little bit, get some saves out of Erlin, they can make a game out of this. But I think that faceoff disparity is going to be too much for Cornell to overcome in the end, and but they'll go balls out trying. The kicker in this one, and I don't actually, as I'm saying this out loud, I really don't like this spread. I'd almost wagered to bet that it's going to be beyond this, but we took Penn State by 2.5. If I'm taking this bet, I'm taking Penn State at -2.5 all day long. If the faceoff game goes poorly for Cornell, Penn State is not Ohio State. If they lose 30 or 37 faceoffs here, there's not going to be that many faceoffs because Cornell's going to have a hard time scoring if they can't get the ball. But if Penn State is able to keep the ball away from the Cornell offense and put it in their offensive side of the field, Cornell is not equipped defensively to stop them, and Cornell is not going to be equipped defensively or they're not going to be able to overcome that face-off loss is pretty much what I'm trying to ramble about here. So hopefully Cornell figures that out. Hopefully they figure out a way to disrupt our Sari because Amat, O'Keefe and company, Folds, you name it, they're going to feast if they get 30 possessions off the face-off dot the way that Ohio State did. And that is it. That's the show. That was a lot of games that we talked about. I forget what our other prop bets are. You can go to our Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter pages to see the full list of all the lines and the prop bets. As always, you can go to laxfactor.com, watch these videos there, buy some swag. We have t-shirts, hats, all sorts of cool lacrosse gear that you can buy there. And then you can visit our sponsor, Sideline Swap, best place to buy and sell lacrosse gear by far. Go to sidelineswap.com or click the link in the description below. As always, continue to share this video, share it, like it, do all of those good things. We will be back over the weekend. We'll probably put a video or two out just talking about random stuff, but come back Monday and Tuesday for our recap shows, and we'll try to be long. What we'll probably do is recap Saturday shows Monday and any Saturday's games Monday and Sunday's games on Tuesday is how it's been working out. So as always, thank you for watching. Hoost is out.